AFC South battle is about to take place between the Jaguars and the Colts, and Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen battle it out as well. The Ultimate NFL Pregame Show starts right now.
It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Every team, every game, every angle. The local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network going head-to-head on every matchup. It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Unprecedented insight, unrivaled passion, and unsurpassed knowledge. It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. The Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Week 17 in the NFL is officially here. And we've got everything you need to know heading into the weekend from the local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens and one of the many NFL experts here across our network, the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now the #1 sports podcast network. And from that primetime game between the Bears and the 49ers, so the big 4:00 window matchup between the Bills and the Eagles, to why that AFC South matchup between the Jaguars and the Colts is huge in the 1:00 window. We're going to go game by game to make you the most informed fan for game day. So appreciate everybody for being here. Today's episode of the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Merry Christmas and happy holidays here, as we are just 2 weeks away from the NFL regular season being over. In week 17, you really start to get into those playoff matchups and the tiebreakers and the seeding. So we'll start off with the Saturday matchups. We'll start off with the Texans and the Chargers, two AFC teams that have impressed this season, are in the playoff picture and looking for a big win on Saturday. So John Hickman of Locked On Texans and David Drogemeyer of Locked On Chargers talk key storylines, key matchups, and so much more.
Back here on Crossover Thursday, I am David Drogemeyer of the Locked On Chargers podcast with John Hickman of the Locked On Texans podcast, and we are here getting close to finishing this very special Christmas episode, and we got to finish this up with our keys to victory. And of course, as always, the home team is the Chargers, so I'm going to allow the visitors to get this thing kicked off. Keys to victory. What is the most important key for the Houston Texans to pull out a big victory on Saturday afternoon?
This is a tough one for me because I think Houston's going to run up into a very tough matchup. This is a tough matchup for Houston. If I would, and they're without their starting tackles, might I add. So they're going to move Titus Howard back over, I'm sure, put Blake Fisher out there. Blake Fisher has been featured a lot this year as an inline tight end, jumbo package tackle. But if I were to say the keys to victory, obviously the defense has to play their best ball, right? And DeMeco Ryans in back-to-back weeks, and I just so happen to be blessed to be there, mentioned against the Cardinals and the Raiders, we didn't play up to our standard defensively. And this is a team that hangs their hat on the defense, right? The Texans scored 40 against the Cardinals, but the defense gave up 20, and he wasn't happy. So the defense is going to have to get back to their standard. I can't allow these explosive plays. I had it written down, but against the Raiders, the Texans defense allowed 6 plays of 10 or more, which is kind of, average in the NFL, but 3 plays of 30 or more yards. That's not the Texans standard. That's not the defensive standard. So they're going to have to play good ball, and I think offensively, given the challenges that they have all year, they got to manage the game, control the time of possession, right? Offensive line has to do a better job of securing their first block, get into the second level, giving running lanes for their running backs, right? And when the pass and throws are needed to be made, franchise quarterbacks make them. And I think C.J. Stroud is a franchise quarterback. He's had problems this year, but he's going to have to be excellent this game against the Chargers defense. And so Nico Collins involved, Dalton Schultz involved. Again, find a way to get Christian Kirk involved to be that third-headed monster and control the time of possession, and maybe they can win this game.
Yeah, I think for the Chargers, it's learn from your mistakes. The game plan last year was not good enough on either side of the ball, whether it was offense or defense. Got to learn from those mistakes and also use what worked, right? The first time, it was Ladd McConkey going absolutely crazy. He has to be heavily involved in the game plan, and I'm sure that he will be, but not just him. You got to spread it around. You got to get the ball to everybody. You got to have contributions from everyone. And that's why the next one is the young guys got to step up. I mean, the biggest improvements for the Chargers is the rookies that they brought in and the major contributions that they've been able to make. Tight end Arante Gadsden II is a big addition. Over 600 receiving yards so far this year. He wasn't there last year. Amarian Hampton also wasn't there last year. And also, fair or not, the rookies are going to have to play like vets this week. I mean, they just need it. They're going to require it. Everyone's going to have to step up if the Chargers want to win this game. Jamari Caldwell, the defensive tackle, R.J. Mickens, one of their late round safeties, a guy who has a couple of interceptions. Those guys have to step up and play their best football if they want to win this game. And then third and last but not least, it's special teams. They have to come through. Chargers offensively and defensively will need the special teams to help them pull out this game. A return touchdown would be phenomenal. But even if they could just get a couple of returns to help set them up for shorter fields to be able to score, that's going to be massive. And also, they're going to need their punter to be able to control the field position as well. Pin them inside the 20. Make them have to scale the length of the football field. No short fields. It can't happen. Those are all things that the Chargers absolutely have to do if they want to pull out a very important victory on Saturday.
Well, can I ask you, how's the special teams right now for the Chargers?
They're okay. I think as far as kicking a field goal, they are one of the best in the league. They have the most accurate kicker in NFL history with Dicker to the kicker, who has been pretty much automatic. Their punt game is all about the hang time. J.K. Scott is all about limiting returns and, kicking it sky high and making them have to fair catch. He's done an excellent job at that. His net yardage isn't the best. It never has been, but that's not the way he, really does his thing. The return game is something that has left a lot to be desired. They did have an all-pro returner with Darius Davis, but he's missed the last couple of weeks with a knee injury, and he didn't practice today, and I don't know if he's going to be ready for this game on Saturday. So they're going to have Keandre Lambert-Smith step up once again. They've been having Lab McConkey at least fair catch on punt returns. I don't know if they're really comfortable letting him actually do a punt return just because how important he is to the Chargers offense. From a coverage perspective, they've been a little leaky on kick returns. They haven't allowed any super big kick returns, which is good. And they do have a special teams ace with Del'Shawn Phillips, who is an absolute tackling machine. He truly is a fantastic player, but they can get away with they can get away with allowing a couple of returns that they absolutely should not allow. So if the Texans, get a big return, that could really help them shorten the field with an offense that's trying to find their footing.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of looking at some of the numbers right now. If one area of this game where I think Houston can create an edge, it would be in the return game for the rookie Jalen Noel. Has a couple of very good returns this year. And again, those returns help Houston's offense kind of have a short field to work with. They don't necessarily have to go the distance to score points. And a good return with how Kaimi Fairbairn has been playing over the last couple of seasons, hey, all you got to do is get it to the 48, and you may be able to trust him to knock it down, right? So that's an edge for Houston that I think Texan fans and Charger fans need to look out for.
John's over at Locked On Texans. David is over at Locked On Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Ravens and the Packers coming off two brutal losses each in Week 16. And while the Packers are officially in the playoffs, the Ravens are fighting for their playoff lives, and a loss would eliminate them from playoff contention. So you have myself, Kevin Ostraker, Locked On Ravens, and Brandon Snide, the host of the Locked On Packers Squad Show, talking about which one of these teams will come out on top. Moving along and rounding out our crossover Thursday at Locked On Ravens and Locked On Packers, Kevin Ostraker, Brandon Snide still here with you, talking Ravens and Packers football. Brandon, I'll start with you on this one. Let me get your three keys to victory for this Green Bay Packers team when it comes to how they can defend their home turf, beat the Ravens, and make sure they pick up a pivotal Week 17 win.
Yeah, and it's two of the three, Kevin. We kind of already hit on it, but the first one for me, it's a reason that they probably have almost three losses on their schedule. I guess it's a tie, technically, with the Dallas Cowboys. Special teams, Kevin. It's literally has costed them they would have probably already have clinched the NFC North, Kevin. I'm being quite honest with you. They probably would have beat Dallas had they not blocked the extra point. They probably would have beaten, well, I know they would have beaten Cleveland on a walk-off field goal, but that was blocked. Then you look at the Chicago Bears in week 16, where you can't recover the onside kick. The Packers have 5 losses. That's 3 off the top of my head, Kevin, due to special teams. Like, it's literally been an issue with the Green Bay Packers, I think, since I've been alive, Kevin, but it has gotten worse and worse because Rich Bisaccia is the highest paid coordinator, or one of, in the entire NFL. And it's been a unit that continues to struggle. And guess what? There's not a better coach for in that unit than John Harbaugh in the NFL. They're going to come in and they always play sound special teams. So that's going to be my first key. The Packers have to play clean special teams. Number 2, kind of already touched on a little bit. You have to contain Derrick Henry. You have to contain if he plays Lamar Jackson. And quite frankly, that continues on even if it's Tyler Huntley. I mean, Derrick Henry, we've rattled off his numbers: over 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns, 5 yards per carry. The Ravens, 3rd in the NFL in total rush yards, 3rd in rush yards per game at almost 150. The Packers have got to contain the run game. You want to put these guys, whether it's Lamar Jackson or Tyler Huntley, in 2nd and long, in 3rd and long. Get Rashawn Gary, Brenton Cox, who the Packers just got off of the injured list. Get those guys, pin their ears back, get pressure on the quarterback. It's not been a great secondary for the Green Bay Packers. Xavier McKinney has been underwhelming this year. He's had a lot of dropped interceptions, but it's a secondary for the Green Bay Packers that when they know they're in obvious passing downs, they can come out and they can make the big plays. So you've got to contain the Ravens running game. That's key number 2. Key number 3, kind of touched it on it the segment before. The offensive line for the Green Bay Packers, whether it's Jordan Love, Kevin, or it's Malik Willis, you got to keep those 2 upright. Though they cannot take a hit in this game like they took a hit against the Chicago Bears, because if one of them suits up and one of them doesn't, and one of them gets hurt, Malik Willis has injured his throwing shoulder against the Chicago Bears. Jordan Love, we know, has the concussion. They don't have another quarterback, Kevin. Josh Jacobs, according to Matt LaFleur, now they'll probably suit up 3, but Josh Jacobs, according to Matt LaFleur, was their emergency quarterback against the Chicago Bears. Wow. Like, that's how dangerous it was. So these guys up front for the Green Bay Packers have got to be stout in this game. We don't know the availability of Zach Tom. Obviously, he's dealing with the back injury and the knee injury. Packers, as I mentioned before, got to run the ball efficiently. You have to be able to get these quarterbacks, whether it's Willis or it's Love, you've got to get them in advantageous situations and keep them upright. It is going to be pivotal that the Packers offensive line, plays one of their, if not their best game of the season.
Yep. It all starts up front. It all starts up front. And, I'm in agreement with you on that. I think the Ravens, it kind of goes into it. So I was going to talk about winning the turnover battle for Baltimore, first of all. And part of that is, keeping Tyler Huntley or Lamar Jackson, whoever's out there, keeping them upright, not letting them take hits, not speeding up their internal clocks. And as a defense, you have to put Malik Willis and Jordan Love in those situations. Sure, so exactly what your point was, the Ravens, they really struggled to force turnovers early in the season. They have gotten better at it as the year has gone on. And again, like I said, with the Ravens being such a momentum-based team, they really take that momentum from turnovers. They had 2 really big ones against New England on Sunday night. And again, that game didn't result in a win, but you could tell it. The Patriots were driving. They were looking to take the momentum back. And then an interception by Marlon Humphrey and a strip sack fumble by Ardarius Washington right before the half really turned those tides to, I guess, at the end of the game, not let the Patriots win by more, but keep the Ravens in the game at the end. So I think winning the turnover battle is going to be huge for Baltimore. Secondly, 3rd down is going to be so huge for both these teams in this game. But the Packers offense versus the Ravens defense on 3rd down. This is the best offense in the NFL on 3rd down in Green Bay. 3rd down conversion percentage, they're converting over 50% of their opportunities on 3rd down. Baltimore, who was, again, terrible in 3rd down defense early in the season, has come all the way up to number 7 in 3rd down defense this season. So they've really reshaped their identity there. They held the Patriots to 4 of 12 on 3rd down on Sunday night. And that's a very explosive offense like we've seen over the course of the season. And, on the flip side of things, Baltimore with their 3rd down offense, they're kind of they're 16th. They're right smack dab in the middle. Green Bay is 12th, so kind of middle there. But I really think that 3rd down is going to dictate a lot in this game because we saw Baltimore go 7 for 11 on 3rd down against the Patriots. They kept drives alive, and that's something that, despite a tough loss, Todd Monk and their offensive coordinator really spoke up about when talking about some of that game and what went right for the team on Sunday night. And then finally, I am going to say the one that we've talked about is run Derrick Henry. Run him 30 times. The Ravens have been talking about this rotation type deal. And, we're going to rotate Keaton Mitchell. And I love Keaton Mitchell personally. I think he's an awesome player, a really good compliment to Derrick Henry. But your season's on the line. Your star players need to be the ones that you utilize. And like we talked about, the Ravens, if they can run the ball effectively early, opening up their play action game, using the tight ends effectively in that, like they just need guys to step up and just play your game. Too many times the Ravens have just gone away from that ground game. And like you talked about, Brandon, I mean, this right now is the best rushing offense in the NFL in yards per attempt. But they only have the 9th most carries in the league this season, which is a far cry from what they usually do. They usually are top 2, top 5, sometimes top 1 in carries in a season. It's been a different year this year. It's been a challenging year, but this team absolutely needs to run the football against this Green Bay front. Even if it's not working, even if Green Bay stops it early, keep going back to that well, keep Green Bay on their toes. Do not give them the satisfaction of making your offense one-dimensional early in this game. That's going to be something I think Baltimore has to do really effectively. But I think this game's going to be a good one. Again, a lot on the line Saturday night. Don't go looking for that Sunday afternoon 1 p.m. game. Is not going to be there. Ravens and Packers play on Saturday night in prime time. You can find me over at Locked On Ravens. You can find Brandon over at the Locked On Packers Squad Show and Locked On Packers, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. 1 o'clock window. Let's dive into that. Jaguars and Colts. The Jaguars have been incredible this season. They are on a run. Meanwhile, the Colts are on a run too, just in the wrong direction after Daniel Jones tore his Achilles. So 2 big AFC South teams and a big AFC South matchup. Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars and Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts talk about which one of these teams will come out with a big AFC South victory.
All right, welcome back to the show. Every dayers, we are talking Colts and Jaguars at Lucas Oil Stadium. It is the Colts' final home game of the year, and really they're one of their final chances to really show that they've got some gumption and some life left in them, because they lose and they're done. They might be done before the game even begins, because again, we mentioned Houston plays on Saturday, and they need to win out and they need Houston to lose out. So, even if that is the case where they enter this game out of the playoffs, you really hope to see them come in there pissed off by how the season, like they need to take their frustrations out on the slide they just experienced and missing out on the playoffs after a 7-1 start. You want to see them with fight, because there's nothing more disappointing that we've seen this with Colts teams in the past. Like they faced the Giants last year with a historically bad offense, and the Giants put up 45 points on the Colts. These are the kind of games that we see the Colts kneel to their opponent and just don't show up. So they cannot do that. But before I get to like the specifics of what the Colts need to do to actually win, because like they can win this game. I mean, the Jaguars are the better team, but they can win. But when you look at this one, Wig, what do you see as the Jaguars, like their most seamless way to win this game, like the biggest factors in order for them to win?
Just keep being themselves. Know who you are when you come out of the locker room, and focus on your strengths as how they match up with the weaknesses of the other team, and not so much just worried about the weaknesses of the other team. I think they just have to come out and understand that every little single thing that you do matters. It goes back to the fourth quarter against Houston. That is going to be something I believe that sticks in their minds of you got to step on people, and everything that you do is going to determine whether you win or lose this game. And because it's so fluid, and because they're still building up to who they want to be and the newness of this entire organization, I think the proof of concept of the hard work that they put in is making them want to go back. I likened it yesterday to someone who goes to the gym. Early on, you don't really see those gains, right? And then all of a sudden, at some point, you go somewhere and somebody goes, "You've been working out?" You go, "You notice?" I think the Jaguars notice, and that makes them hungry and they want to go back. They can't wait to get back on their treadmill and put the work in, because the work they're putting in is getting tangible results in front of everybody's eyes. So I think they're putting the work in, and when you put the work in, it gives you a sense of entitlement that is the right type of entitlement, which means we're going to go out here and show you exactly what we've been doing and who we are. And because of that, I think they're going to win the game. But I do think pride is a part of it. Just like last week, Houston knew they had to win. And they go out there and the Raiders give them everything that they wanted. And I know you guys were probably cheering hard for the Raiders to win that game, but this is the NFL. Teams are still going to play hard. The Jaguars play the Titans next week. The Titans, even though they beat the Chiefs this week, the Titans will have to come in here and play this hot team at home. They're going to get squashed. And we know that because all the optics works in the Jaguars' favor. The Colts, I believe the Jaguars are going to beat them, but I believe the Colts are talented and good enough to put up enough resistance that the Jaguars are going to have to make sure that they're smart and that they keep their heads right and don't get dumb penalties and don't turn the ball over and put themselves in a bad situation. I look forward to it. I'm going to tell you right now, I look for the game to go back and forth, but eventually the best team is going to win, and that's Jacksonville.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest keys for the Colts, I'm going to look at the defense specifically. 2 weeks ago against Seattle, they held them to 6 field goals. Like, they kept Seattle, a really high-powered offense, out of the end zone. And they traded field goals like in the final minute, and that's how the Seahawks beat the Colts. It was a close game where the Colts, you look at it going into it, they probably would have had no business winning, but the Colts almost left Seattle with a win.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the defense that really stood up. Phillip Rivers' first game, it was the defense that stood up. Last week, could not have been further from the truth. The defense didn't even show up.
Right.
They got to the quarterback one time, and of course, Laiatu forced a fumble on that. The tight end scooped it out of the air and picked up like a yard or two. It's going to be one of those games, So with the defense, it's got to be the pass rush. They have got to show up. When they don't, terrible things happen. So DeForest Buckner is back now. Came back from IR last week on Monday night. So you have Laiatu, who has been playing really, really well in the last several weeks. You get DeForest Buckner another week into the system where he's maybe playing a few more snaps, being more effective. The problem is outside of those two, they just have such little help at pass rush. Samson Ebukam and Kwity Paye and Tyquan Lewis, those guys they're fine in minimal roles as pass rushers, but they're not going to give you much juice there.
Right.
And so you're really looking at two guys to dominate. And when I look at this specific matchup, I'm like, you're going to have to get to Trevor and try and rattle him and shake his confidence a little bit in order for this not to work. Because Trevor's playing, he's playing with swagger right now. He's rolling out, making these incredible throws on the move and everything. You're going to have to try and keep him contained to the pocket and bring him down in that pocket in order to win. But that's one of the biggest things for me. How's their protection been lately?
Jaguars have been fine. They struggled a little bit early in the game against Denver last week, but then they regrouped and Trevor got the ball out of it. Yeah, it is Denver. But, no matter the opponent, you still have to get it done. And one of the things that they've had to do is get it done against a team that has really good players on defense. They struggled some against Houston, and early in the year against both the Rams and the Seahawks, they really, really did struggle. So it was good for them to at least be able to right the ship during the game and not have to wait until they get back to the facility and practice and try to fix those things. They kind of fixed it on the fly and it worked. Therefore, that gave them another level of confidence that they know that adjustment can be made in game. On the flip side of it, Trayvon Walker's healthy. He's been banged up. He had a fake thing on his hand all year because of a hand injury. You look at the stat sheet last week and you won't see it, but he dominated the Denver on third down when they moved him inside in the run game. He's been all over the place, man. So he is healthy. Josh Hines Allen is healthy. They're getting really, really good production out of BJ Green, the rookie defensive lineman who gives them some speed, and Dennis Gardeck. They're getting it from everybody. So Phillip Rivers being a statue, he ain't gonna have a whole bunch of avenues to get out of there. And then with the line being kind of a mixed bag right now, I think he's gonna have to get the ball out real quick. And when he does, that's when you can start jumping routes. And that's why I think the Jaguars are gonna make 2 turnovers. I think they're gonna get out to a big lead, run the ball, hang on to win the game by 10 points.
Yeah, that pass rush is something definitely worth being concerned about, which leads into me saying the run game has got to get going, man. Jonathan Taylor had like 200 plus yards against the Falcons, but then since then, not even a 100-yard game.
We're number one in the league against the rush. The Jaguars,
Exactly.
Jaguars don't play them games. They going. You want to do that, then it's going to be a long day because they ain't going to let nobody just keep running.
I know, and that's just the tough thing is you look at like the common denominators of this slide is the run game has not been what it was early in the year during the streak. I mean, Jonathan Taylor got out to an enormous lead in the NFL in rushing yards, and now he's not even leading the league anymore. And then, like I mentioned, the pass rush has been so hot and cold. So I think those are two of the biggest things. And then obviously taking care of the football. That's the case any game. But when you're already kind of your back's against the wall, you cannot give your much better opponent those bonus possessions. So yeah, the Colts, I didn't feel good about this game, before last. I felt good about San Francisco, but I didn't feel good about this one or Houston. I still don't, obviously. So it's really hard for me to say the Colts are going to pull this one out. They can, but I don't know that they will.
Jake's over at Locked On Colts. Tony's over at Locked On Jaguars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. AFC North battle, Steelers and Browns. Now, the Steelers might already have the AFC North locked up after a potential Ravens loss on Saturday, if that is the case, but they'll have a chance if the Ravens win to lock up the division on their own with a win over Cleveland here, while Cleveland will look to play spoilers. So Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers and Spencer German of Locked On Browns talk about if Shedeur Sanders can pull off the upset or if Aaron Rodgers can clinch the AFC North division.
Final part of the conversation here on this crossover episode of Locked On Browns and Locked On Steelers. We talk about some paths to victory for both of these football teams. And I'll let you have the floor here first, Chris, because I know I took it last time. But, I think for the Browns, a lot of this has to start with I think a lot of this does start with like whether or not DK Metcalf is playing or not, and whether or not they can stop the Steelers' run game that's been so effective, especially in recent weeks.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is going to depend on that. If the Steelers' run game gets loose, it's going to make it really hard for Myles Garrett to have an impact on the game. If the Steelers' run game is going, it's also going to. I think it's going to be right where the Steelers want. They're gonna. This is the team that honestly I think they've wanted to be able to be all season, but they knew that this is going to be a bumpy road this season. They knew that the offensive line was going to take time, and we said this all season long on the Locked On Steelers podcast that the big thing for this season was, can this offensive line take a step up this year? Can you get to the end of the season feeling like, hey, this is not just a unit trying to find its way anymore. This is now an above average unit that's on its way to maybe being an elite unit in a couple of years. And I think that they've taken steps in that direction. I think by all metrics, they become at least one, when you look at pressure percentage and sacks allowed, I think that they are one of the top pass protection units in the NFL right now when it comes to that. And then on top of that, now you're getting the run game going. This could really be a situation for the Steelers that becomes the offensive line being a bigger part of the game. And this is where they've invested a lot of their draft capital in recent weeks. When you look, or recent years, excuse me, you look back to the start of the Omar Khan era, the Steelers' current GM. When he took over in 2023, their first pick was Broderick Jones. Granted, Broderick Jones on injured reserve, but the year after that, they draft Troy Fautanu in the first round, Zach Frazier in the second round, Mason McCormick in the fourth round. They've put a lot of effort into fixing this offensive line because they knew it was a problem. And as they've done that, I think the Steelers have seen growth, but it took time for them to get to this point, right? It took time for them to coalesce, to figure things out. But it's what I said would happen, what happened the last time the Steelers invested this much into an offensive line. In the early 2010s, Marquise Pouncey, David DeCastro, Marcus Gilbert, Ramon Foster, that crew that became a top 5 offensive line in the NFL, they took time to figure each other out. The thing I always point out to Steelers fans is go back to 2013. It was DeCastro's second year, and on the first drive of the season, he took out Marquise Pouncey's knee, and Pouncey was out for the season. It took time for that group to turn into a really good group, but I think what you're starting to see is this Steelers offensive line is turning into a group that is formidable, and so that's where a big matchup is going to be: is can the Browns' defensive front keep those guys in check and win at the line of scrimmage?
Yeah, and that's been a problem. Like I said, without Malik Collins out there the last couple weeks, I think they've missed him dearly as that sort of presence in the middle of this defensive line, playing alongside Miles, playing alongside Mason Graham, playing alongside the rotation of like Alex Wright and Isaiah McGuire. It's been a real issue. I talked about how effective the Bills were running the football between the tackles. That's part of the reason why. So I think you're right. Like everything in this game feels like it starts with the Steelers' run game. Can the Browns stop it effectively and enough? And if not, they could be in for a long day. I think conversely, the Browns have to find a way to stay on the football field and put together some longer drives, and that's probably going to take Shedeur Sanders delivering some heroics. You feel a little bit better if TJ Watt isn't playing in this game about him being able to sort of have some time in the pocket, not have him bearing down on him, but that Steelers defensive line is still a tall task. They're a really good group. So, he has to be aware of kind of his surroundings, what's going on. I thought Shedeur did a really good job this past week of taking kind of what the defense was giving him, and he wasn't just trying to push the ball downfield quite as much. He was taking his checkdowns, and that's okay. Like, that's effective. It can allow you to work down the field. That's going to be so pivotal in this game, and they can't let it spiral the way that it did the first time around. But I'm fascinated to see what the game plan sort of is with Shedeur and what he kind of brings to the table in this one, because that is the one area I think the Browns can maybe have some success, like I mentioned. The other thing I'll say too, and I've brought this up in recent weeks, special teams has cost this team so dearly this season. Whether it's just the teams running back kickoffs, not even for touchdowns, but like to midfield to start the opening drive of a game or the opening drive of a half, and that really flips the sort of script. Last week they had Corey Bojorquez, who's the punter, obviously couldn't handle the snap on a field goal, and so there was a field goal taken off the board right before the half because of that, and that likely they lose 23-20. That's a game time field goal potential when it's all said and done. So every single week I bring this up because you just expect at some point Browns special teams are going to have a lapse, and if they do that against the Steelers team, we know they're going to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is if you're the Browns, you don't want to get Shedeur Sanders into you want to keep him on schedule. I think that's something that when Kevin Stefanski has gotten the Browns to beat the Steelers and the offense to function, they've kept a quarterback on schedule. They've been able to kind of keep things balanced, keep the Steelers guessing. If this gets to a point where the run game doesn't work, and they can't have those on-time, scheduled throws that are quick hits into the zone, you're going to start forcing Shedeur Sanders to have to play some sandbox football, and you do not want Shedeur Sanders playing sandbox football. It was great in college, but that's when he starts to make mistakes in the NFL that good defenses can counter on. And listen, I think for a good chunk of the season, the Steelers were not a good defense. They were not playing at a high level. They would even tell you that themselves. They felt that they weren't living up to what they were supposed to. But I think after their loss to the Packers, a few things changed in the defense and how they operated. One, they switched Jalen Ramsey back to safety. They brought in Kyle Duggar. They used a lot more two high safeties. I think they figured some things out there. But then two, they were figuring out how to fix things in the run defense with a lot of new guys and young guys up front. And I think since that loss to the Bills, you've seen that turn around where the Steelers have been able to keep teams contained for the most part. Yes, the Ravens ran for 200 yards in them, but in a way that did not change the game in a huge way. They only allowed the Dolphins to run for a single first down in that game. And after that, and then the Lions came with a number 5 rushing offense, arguably the best 1-2 running back punch in the NFL.
Yeah, they shut them down.
And they had 15 rushing yards against the Steelers. If the Steelers are able to take away the run and force Shedeur Sanders into predictable 3rd and longs, and they're able to lock in on where the Browns want to get their first and second reads, it could be a rough day for Shedeur. So I think Kevin Stefanski is going to need a heck of a game plan to kind of keep the Steelers off balance and not able to take away his primary reads. And keep Shedeur Sanders on a clock that allows him to stay on schedule and in part of a specific attack plan that protects the football. Because that's the other thing about this Steelers team. They feed off of turnovers. And I think what's kind of interesting about the past few weeks is, the times early in the season when they were playing really well. They forced 5 turnovers against the Patriots and pulled off an upset there. They forced 6 turnovers against the Colts, and before the Colts slide started, before Daniel Jones went down, and they had some other games they had multiple turnovers. During this win streak, the last 3 straight games, they had 1 turnover against the Ravens, 1 turnover against the Dolphins, none against the Lions. They aren't as turnover dependent right now in their defensive success. And if the turnovers come back this week, watch out, Browns, because that'll be a problem.
And that's been an issue for Shedeur Sanders the last couple of weeks. He's throwing a lot of these passes that are getting tipped at the line of scrimmage and then intercepted, and so he's got to be able to avoid that. And that's the old cliche, right? We could say win the turnover battle is a path to victory for every team every single week if we wanted to. But I think for the Browns especially, like, this offense it has so many problems and just can't dig out of holes. You cannot set the offense back by committing those types of things. So absolutely have to protect the football. And I think there does have to be balance, to your point, with this offense. It can't all be on Shedeur Sanders, even though I think he can have some effectiveness in this game. They got to find a way to be able to run it, and that's easier said than done right now against the Steelers.
Check out Chris over at Locked On Steelers. Check out Spencer over at Locked On Browns, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up in the second part of the show here on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, we will dive into the rest of the 1 o'clock window. Some good games in there. Stay tuned. Plenty coming away on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. And live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up, and you can bet next touchdown scorers, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So that Pittsburgh and Cleveland game, really big matchup. And over on FanDuel right now, the Steelers are 3-point road favorite. So if you like the Steelers or the Browns, be sure you head over to FanDuel. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Moving along on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you, diving into all of Week 17's NFL action here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks so much for making the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out the new Everydayer Club over on the network. You get access to an ad-free audio feed for whatever Locked On team you support. It's compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. Plus, you get an invite to the members only Locked On Everydayer Club at Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners. And you also, potentially, if you wanted to, you could go to the All Access tier, which has a whole other host of things. So be sure you check out the links in the description of your Locked On team and Locked On podcast. So thanks for supporting us over here on the network. And let's now get into the rest of the 1 p.m. slate of games. We'll start off with the Seahawks and Panthers. The Seahawks have been incredible, coming off of a wild Thursday night win over the Los Angeles Rams. Meanwhile, the Carolina Panthers, they've had a season to remember as they are trying to make that postseason dream a reality. So Julian Council of Locked On Panthers and Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks talk keys to victory and so much more.
Back here for one final segment on this Locked On crossover Thursday of Locked On Panthers, Locked On Seahawks, again presented by our friends over on PrizePicks. Looking at the keys to victory, Corbin, what does Seattle have to do in order to win this game on Sunday and stay atop of the NFC West and atop of the NFC?
I think it starts and it finishes with their ability to make Carolina one-dimensional. Take away their ability to run the football and make it that Bryce Young has to beat them with the offense being on his shoulders, because Seattle should be, they may have a few guys out in their secondary, but they're going to be close to full strength in this football game. They're going to be looking to get after the quarterback. This has been a run defense that now has had 24 consecutive games without giving up a 100-yard rusher. They're going to be looking to get to 25 in this contest. The Panthers have a couple of really solid running backs that complement each other. The Seahawks are going to be looking to bottle up Chuba Hubbard and company. They're going to be trying to get back to Bryce Young and make life difficult on him. And you look at where Carolina has struggled when they have had to really put everything on his plate, on Bryce Young's plate, and the offensive line has been tested with all the different combinations they've had. Seattle's defensive front, even with Derek Hall being suspended for this game, they've still got DeMarcus Lawrence. They've got Uchenna Nwosu. They've got Boye Mafe, all the interior defensive talent that they've got on that defensive line. If they can find a way, to me, the key is getting at least 2 sacks and 6 quarterback hits. And I think if they're able to check those boxes off, then they can get a few turnovers. You're going to have make some of those big plays on the road, especially for a team that even if they can't clinch this week, and there's still a way that Carolina can, this game still has significance for them no matter what. But if you can find a way to get that pressure, consistent pressure on Bryce Young, not let him extend plays when you're able to collapse the pocket and extend him and allow his receivers more time to throw the football, those are going to be the keys. Getting pressure and being able to finish, being able to get after him. And I think that's how you get the turnovers. You get some quick, sudden changes, get the ball back to Sam Darnold and let him go to work, and let Seattle's run game go to work. I think that is the recipe for the Seahawks to get off to a quicker start and find a way to win a game that I think is going to be a challenging one on the road, especially with the target they've got on their backs and what the Panthers have at stake in the NFC South.
Yeah, definitely got to get home on Bryce. And that's been, again, the issue that some of these teams recently have had. They've not been able to get him on the ground, and they have not been able to get the ball out. And you look at Carolina over the last couple of games, if you take out the whole pitchy woo-woo they did at the game against New Orleans where they weren't going to win anyways, like 2 seconds left, having to go like 80 yards, they haven't turned the ball over in 4 of their last 5 games. The last time they really had turnovers was against San Francisco on the road on Monday night, where Bryce did not play well. But other than that, he's taking care of the football. And early on in the season, that was a common thread to why they started off 0-2 and were behind Miami by 17 points before they came back. He did not take care of the ball, and Carolina did not do the best job at protecting him. So that will be obviously a key as well for them. But I'm looking at it as far as, like, you got to get after Sam Darnold. We can talk about all the narratives, Sam in a big game and whether he can live up to the spotlight. He showed you that last Thursday. The guy has been, for the most part, nails the last 2 seasons. And I know it didn't end well last year. We'll see how it ends for them up there in Seattle this year. But when he's kept clean, he's got a 91 PFF grade. When he's under pressure, it's in the 50s. So he goes from being an elite quarterback to being kind of the same old Sam Darnold. They've got to find a way to get pressure on him. The Panthers have been one of the worst pressure teams in the NFL. They have been last in PFF pressure percentage all season long, and they have found a way recently to get quarterbacks on the ground, but they still have not gotten consistent pressure, and that will be an issue for them if they cannot find a way to manufacture that on Sunday. Turnovers are obviously a huge key in this game, as you talk about as well for Carolina. In the wins that Carolina has, they're +7 in turnover margin. Seattle's only +1 in their wins. And overall, the Panthers have a better turnover margin this season than the Seahawks. If they can find a way to force pressure on Sam Darnold, that pressure leads to turnovers and mistakes. That can help them win. And they got to be aggressive. The Seahawks are a better team than them. And we have seen this season when they played against the Rams, they played against the Packers, Dave Canales has been willing to go for 4th downs. He's been willing to be far more aggressive than you may see him against teams that may be considered on the same level as Carolina or below them this season. So you need to be aggressive again in this game if you're going to find a way to get out on top. And then potentially, depending on the result down there in Miami Gardens, Florida, you could be, again, division champs for the first time in a decade. So that's what I'm looking at for Carolina on Sunday. Any other closing thoughts? Potentially, do you have a pick for this game, Corbin, on Sunday?
Yeah, and I will give my prediction, my score prediction I always do on the Friday show. But this one is going to be one of those contests that I think is just because of how inconsistent Carolina's been. If you're going by trends, then this game should be Seattle's. But I don't think you can live and die off of trends, especially this time of year when you have teams that are battling for playoff spots. They're battling to make it into the dance as Carolina is. And playing on the road, Seattle's been as good as anybody. I think Carolina is going to be game for this one. It's going to keep it close, but I think the Seahawks find a way to cover in this one. And I think it's going to boil down to them just having a little bit more talent on both sides of the ball and they've still got so much to play for. This isn't going to be a trap game for the Seattle Seahawks. I know there's some people like, oh, they're going to be looking to the 49ers. Like, so if they're looking at that number 1 seed, you can't be overlooking your next opponent. You've got to win. Mike McDonald's been really good about that messaging. So while I think Carolina is definitely a team that is on the upswing in this one, I find it hard to believe that this Seahawks defense in particular is going to allow this game to not go their way and position themselves where the 49ers and the Rams can take this division and they squander a great opportunity that they have put themselves in. I just can't see the Seahawks doing that in this contest. Though Carolina, maybe they have something to say about that with their season on the line here trying to win that NFC South.
Yeah, and you can make the argument, depending upon this result for Seattle, if they do lose, that could cost them a trip to the Super Bowl, because it is a lot easier when you get that bye and people have to go up to the Pacific Northwest to beat your team at home than obviously having to go on the road if that is the case. And looking over at FanDuel, our partners, Seattle is a 7.5-point road favorite against Carolina. Now, the Panthers have been big dogs like that against the Packers and the Rams. So I would say beware to all Seahawks fans out there when looking at that line, as Carolina's found plenty of ways this season to win as underdogs. Problem's been winning as favorites, which they will not be favored at any point the rest of the season, whether it be next week down in Tampa or if they do make the playoffs. Ain't nobody going to be favoring Carolina in Vegas to win any of these games, which for Panthers is probably the best case scenario.
Julian's over at Locked On Panthers. Corbin's over at Locked On Seahawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Patriots and Jets in AFC East battle. Two teams in very different spots right now. The Patriots coming off a big win against the Ravens in Week 16. They're fighting for that number 1 seed. Meanwhile, the New York Jets. Tough year for them, but hopefully they can continue to build heading into next season. So Nick Cattles of Locked On Patriots, as well as John Butchko of Locked On Jets, talk keys to victory and so much more.
It's Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network, Week 17, an old AFC East rivalry, New York Jets, New England Patriots, and they're kind of back in their natural positions in the world. Jets at the bottom of the league, Patriots dominating. Jets fans, you hate to hear it. Patriots fans, you love to hear it. Nick, let's talk keys to victory for the Patriots. And I mean, I could be sarcastic and say, like, don't set your alarm clock at the right time, be careful driving to the stadium. But what are your keys to victory for the Patriots?
All right, I'll run through my 3. The first one is again, it's kind of cliche and it might be easy, but it's the absolute truth, is keep your foot on the gas. Keep your foot on the gas, no letdowns. Mike Vrabel loves, the idea of like, we don't want to take any naps. And the Patriots, they took a nap in the second half against the Bills. They were a little bit sleepy against the Ravens in the first, as I said, 2.5 quarters or so. Come out of the gates ready to play. Energy, urgency, physicality. The Jets, to me, are a team. They know that they're pretty much dead and buried. If you come out and you punch them in the face, I'm not sure if they'll even respond. So no letdowns. Keep your foot on that gas. Play clean. Play good football, and you should win. The second key to me is it's really a first step towards a 2-step process. I mentioned earlier about Breece Hall. You got to defend the run. Defend the run, defend the run, defend the run, force the Jets to be one-dimensional on offense. And then for the Patriots, run the football. And that's going to be an interesting situation because TreVeyon Henderson in the concussion protocol, we're recording this before practice on Wednesday due to the holiday. Merry Christmas, everybody, even Jets fans. TreVeyon Henderson, he's in concussion protocol. And so he's probably not going to play, I would guess. And so the Patriots really have only one back. Dearness Johnson was their third back last weekend. He played 1 snap. Ramondre Stevenson played 84% of the offensive snaps and played pretty much 99.5% after the TreVeyon Henderson injury. So they're going to have to establish the run game. They want to establish the run game. They want to stay committed to it and be consistent with it as they get ready for January. And my final point is, again, this might be kind of low-hanging fruit, but take care of the ball, right? Take care of the football, tighten up special teams. You mentioned it, John. The Jets, really good in special teams. Don't give the Jets anything easy. Don't hand them the football for a 30-yard touchdown drive. Don't give up big kickoff returns. We saw that in the Bills game where, 2 big kickoff returns equal 2 touchdowns for the Bills. They turned the ball over twice last week. So take care of the football, tighten up special teams, make sure the Jets get nothing easy.
Nick, my keys to victory for the Jets are very similar to what you said. I think if we're being honest, the number one key to victory for the Jets has nothing to do with the Jets. They need the Patriots to come out and sleepwalk through this game. They need the Patriots to, kind of not take them seriously. And, I've covered a lot of bad Jets teams, Nick, through the years. And one thing I've noticed is that sometimes in these late season games, the opponent is kind of looking past the Jets. They're kind of looking to the playoffs. And that's where you get into trouble. And it's actually like one of the running jokes in the Jets fan base is the Jets always pull off some random win to destroy their draft position in December. And frequently what happens is they get a team that just kind of looks past them. And that's what happened back in 2020. That was the most famous example when they lost out on Trevor Lawrence. They won a game that nobody was expecting them to win over a Rams team that ended up making the playoffs. And the Rams pretty much sleepwalked through the first 3.5 quarters of the game. Jets took a 3-score lead. Then the Rams actually started playing and almost came back. It took a touchdown saving tackle by a punter for the Jets to win that game. But anyway, I think the bottom line here is, I made the joke earlier about, make sure you set your alarm clock at the right time. But if the Jets to have any chance in this game, the Patriots have to come out and look lethargic and just be disinterested in this game. And that has nothing to do with the Jets. But I think if we're just being realistic about where these teams are right now, that's a critical component of the Jets winning. My number 2 key is the Jets are going to have to figure out a way to make splash plays. And I'm going to be very broad there. It could be on offense. It could be maybe they get their first interception of the year in this game. But if this is a game of 8 to 10 play drives, New England's going to win by 20 or 30 points. The Jets just don't have the offense to sustain long drives. What can be an equalizer in a game where there's a big talent mismatch is a big play here or there. 2 of the 3 Jets wins this season have come as a direct result of big special teams play. A game against the Cleveland Browns back in November saw the Jets return both a kickoff and a punt for a touchdown. And, maybe it's Breece Hall making big plays. Maybe it's AD Mitchell stepping up and, adding a splash play or two. Again, maybe it's the defense, maybe it's special teams, but Jets are going to need, and maybe it's just steal a possession with a fake kick or something like that. But the Jets are going to need some splash plays in this game. And my third key, and this is kind of a theme where it's just going to take something monumental. Somebody or maybe multiple players need to just have the game of their life. We see it every week in the NFL. Some backup comes in and forces multiple turnovers. Some receiver who's down on the depth chart catches 2 touchdown passes. And it's not sustainable. But in the NFL, everyone's got some talent. Anybody who's playing in the NFL is capable of playing a big game. They're not all capable of sustaining that, but I really do believe that, when you're talking about players in the NFL, even practice squatters, you don't get to the NFL unless you're a really good player. Unless you're anybody even on a practice squad has been one of the best players on the field his entire life up to the NFL. So I think the difference between a good team and a bad team in the NFL isn't that great. That's why you see upsets, maybe not as drastic as this would take, but somebody unheralded, is it John Mechie? Is it Quantez Stiggers maybe delivering a big game at corner? I don't know, but it's going to take like somebody we're not expecting to go out there and just have like a player of the week type performance for the Jets to win.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. When you look at a lot of times we look at these players, and I think it's also the fantasy football factor, John, where, that guy's not a great player, but all these guys have talent, and some of them might have talent in niche aspects of the game, so to speak, but they've all, as you just mentioned, they've been on a football field before and been one of the best players on that field at some point in their life, high school, college, the NFL, CFL. So I don't overlook anybody. I agree with you that there's a little difference between the middle, let's say 15 to 20 teams. I always think every year the top 5 teams are pretty much the cream of the crop. And then you'll have 5 teams that are just god awful. But the middle 15 to 20, those teams, they're very, very slim margins. And, quarterback play is such a huge thing. And I think that's why the Patriots are not where they're at this year. If Drake May did not take this leap as quickly as he did, there's just no way. There's no way on God's green earth that would happen. So you probably do need somebody to pop, or a couple guys to pop on Sunday.
Nick, before we go, I just want to get a sense of how the Patriots fan base views this season. Do you think this is a successful season no matter what happens, or do you think that the view is because of the past success in New England, this team has to go on a playoff run to really make people feel like this was a hugely successful season.
Somebody tweeted at me the other day and said that the Bills and the Ravens games kind of changed their perspective. And now they think like, hey, if they can win one game, it'd be a huge step forward. And I could see that. I think it actually will come down to the matchups, John. Like I think fans look at the Houston Texans, for example, as a team that's like dangerous because their defense. And if you lost to the Texans, it'd be like, well, what happened and who was playing, yada, yada. But a lot of these other teams, I mean, I think with this field, the Patriots, if they're the 1 seed or the 2 seed, if you lose in the if you're the 2 seed and you lose in the first round, even if it's against the Texans, if they're 7th, then I think that would be a tough pill to swallow. I think at this point, what they've done this year and the way Drake May has played, you've got to win at least one playoff game. And if you fall short of that, I do think fans would be frustrated. Now, once you get beyond that, what are the matchups? What's your health like? And anything can happen. And of course, this will be Drake May's first shot in the postseason, and you never know how a guy is going to react his first time around. So I still think there are questions about this team. Their red zone defense is terrible. Their red zone offense has been better since the bye. You look at the run defense. Can they get that straightened out with Milton Williams coming back? Their 4-man pass rush has had major questions since a hot start. And so there are legitimate questions about this football team. But I still think, given your, 13-3 at this point, and you've got Drake May, who's in the MVP talk, you should win at least one in the postseason.
Nick's over at Locked On Patriots. John is over at Locked On Jets, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's talk Saints and Titans now, two teams that are both building for the future, but have seen some positives recently. Tyler Shuck over in New Orleans is playing well and giving Saints fans maybe a glimpse at the future. And over in Tennessee, the Titans coming off a big win over the Chiefs last week. So Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans and Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints talk about which one of these young teams can come out with a big momentum boost victory.
All right, folks, let's cap off today's crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Titans, Locked On Saints. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. We talked about the storylines in this game with the two rookie quarterbacks playing good football coming into this matchup. We talked about all the skill positions, the trenches, everything you need to know matchup-wise outside of that. Now we got to talk about what will ultimately decide this game. And of course, Ross, as I always come back to in most matchups, when you have a bad football team like the Tennessee Titans, the ultimate equalizer is the turnover battle. And when you look at the turnovers for the New Orleans Saints, it has been a little bit up and down, but over the last 3 games, they haven't lost the turnover battle. They've won it twice and tied it once. So that's 3 straight wins. I don't think that that's a coincidence. And for the Tennessee Titans, it's all about the turnovers, because if they turn it over, they don't have enough on offense to kind of get enough points. So I think this turnover battle, and like I said, Cam Ward been very good with the turnovers as of late. The Titans have been handling themselves, not losing turnover battles. I think it's going to be, both teams have obvious weaknesses, and it's going to be too easy to beat them if turnovers happen. I really think this game is more about which team makes the least amount of mistakes, and that'll be shown in the turnover battle.
Big time. I completely agree with you. Both of these teams over the last 3 games averaging 0.7 in the positive when it comes to turnover margin. That's a winning turnover margin. That's how you win football games. I don't have a ton to add. I'll go to the kind of my next thing, but I completely agree with you that the turnover battle is obviously huge here. Similar and connected to that, I'm curious to see which of these teams starts fastest, because like you mentioned, the Titans don't have a ton of firepower over on the offensive side, although I really like Alec Ayumanor. I love the receiver over there. I can't wait to see how he grows. I know he's got some growing to do. Can't wait to see how he grows. But I know that there's some, point scoring issues for both of these teams and everything in terms of inconsistencies. But if you're able to get a faster start than the other team, whichever team does that, I don't know which of these teams has a better opportunity to close the gap and come from behind to get a win. We've seen the Saints do it, but I don't know if it's a part of their DNA completely just yet. So I think a fast start, in addition to that turnover battle, massive in this game.
No, I think you're 100% right, because I mean, the Titans did it in Arizona back in week 5. They had that crazy comeback, which really, I mean, Arizona choked that game away. They dropped the ball at the 1 yard line, and Cam throws a pick that's fumbled into the end zone 10 yards. The Titans jump on it and score. You know, like that was a nonsense comeback. And if you take that out, which I hate doing that, take out the good plays, and they weren't any good. Right. Well, duh, you know.
If they don't score points, they won't win. Yeah, I know.
Right. Take away his 70-yard touchdown run, and he didn't have a good day. Like, well, you know, he did have that. So if you take away that Arizona thing, though, the Titans haven't won a lot of games, period, and they haven't come back, obviously. Right. Like, they get down, they don't come back. And they were winning in Cleveland and were able to hold off the Browns at the very, very end. They didn't close very well. So, like, we have not seen the Tennessee Titans come back. And they won last week at home. This is going to be in Tennessee for the first time in 400-plus days. They haven't won a home game in over 400 days. So it's not like this team is awesome at home and there's some home field advantage. Like, it might be like the crowd last week was more Chiefs fans. It's not an exaggeration. It was primarily Chiefs fans. Saints fans are excited right now. I don't know that it'll be all Saints fans, but yeah, it's not that far away to where Saints fans won't be represented. So I don't think the Titans will have some crazy home field advantage or anything like that. But at the end of the day, I think the Titans are going to desperately want to win this game. And Ross, I got to tell you, I'm at a point where I want to win this game too. I want Cam Ward to be better than Tyler Shough. I want him to outplay him. And I think Tyler Shough has a lot more help in the receiving department. I think having a Chris Olave, having a Jawan Johnson, I think having a Kellen Moore, I think that's a major advantage for Tyler Shough, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, Cam Ward was the number 1 overall pick. Tyler Shough was the number 40 overall pick. Like, the expectations for Cam Ward are that he can elevate his team higher. That's why he got drafted so much higher, right? You know what I mean? That is the reality. So I want to see Cam Ward go out there and win the freaking game. Like, that's what I want to see. And I'm sure Saints fans feel the same, as we talked about earlier, about Tyler Shough. So, like, turnovers are a key to victory. You know, we talked about all the different things. I think special teams will matter a lot. The Titans have the Pro Bowl special teams returner.
Charlie Smith, baby.
There you go. Like, but ultimately, I really do think that whichever quarterback plays better in this game is going to win the game. Like, the Saints are going to get some pressure. The Saints won't be able to run the ball. The Saints will probably get a little more pressure on Cam Ward, but like, it's all going to balance out. One of these young quarterbacks is going to have to step up and be the guy that we hope they are.
Yep. And I think the defenses that are lining up across from them are going to be a big part of telling that story about which of the quarterbacks came out successfully, right? The Saints, over the course of the last 5 weeks, right? 6 weeks, but 5 games for them, because they had a bye week since then. But since week 10, they're the top ranked number 1 total defense in the league, and they're the number 2 scoring defense in the league. And with all due respect, you might say, well, not you, but people might say, oh, well, the Saints schedule really lightened up after they played the Rams in week 9. Sure, let's not pretend like the Tennessee Titans nor the New Orleans Saints are world beaters here, right?
Yes.
We're talking about same class conversation right now, right?
Yes.
So I think that's going to end up being a big, big piece of this as well. I'm taking the Saints to win this game. I think they're going to win their 4th in a row for the first time since 2020. There's a lot that hinges on this in terms of, crime goes down in New Orleans when the Saints win, okay? Like, everything matters here when it comes to the Saints, and I think they want to keep that going. I think Kellen Moore, Tyler Shough, and this New Orleans Saints team, they've gotten the taste of winning now. And I think it's the reason why the Saints might want it more, because they've experienced it. They've been building this streak. They have a lot of momentum going into the offseason, and I think they want to keep it going.
Well, I think Saints
Two
fans
motivated
certainly
teams. Two motivated
right.
teams.
The teams are motivated. I would tell you Saints fans certainly want this more than Titans fans. There are definitely Titans fans out there still committed to the tank, and I totally respect it. But I think these games, like you mentioned in our first segment, to bring it full circle, these games matter, and setting the culture matters and all of that. And I think this would be, if Cam Ward can outduel another rookie quarterback and a team in a similar situation. Like you said, the Saints' last 6 games are Carolina, Atlanta, Miami, Tampa Bay, Carolina, and the Jets. But the Titans are a team that's worse than most of those teams, or equal, at least, to some of those teams. So it's not like the Saints can't do what they've been doing against the Titans, or you know. So I think you're 100% right in that realm. I honestly do think that the Saints find a way to pull this out late. They have more winning experience. Even if they get down early, I think that they could still come back and win it. I think the Titans have a good showing. They're going to be able to run the football, I think, and the Saints aren't going to be able to run the football, and that'll keep it close throughout. But I do think the Saints have the playmakers and the better coaching on the offensive side that will ultimately get them more points than the Titans. So I see it similarly with the Saints pulling it off.
Yeah, and I think the defense for New Orleans is a big thing. I discredited the Saints' ability to close the gap, but really the way that defense has performed in second halves, you could see it in terms of the opportunity being there. So I shouldn't shortchange them as much in that category. It's just that when you have 4 wins or you have 3 wins, you don't get a lot of examples of, they came from behind and won a game. You know what I mean? And so, but I think the defense can be a big factor too. But this should be a really fun one, man. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be, I don't think this is going to be a boring game by any stretch of the imagination.
Ross is over at Locked On Saints. Tyler's over at Locked On Titans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Buccaneers and Dolphins. Dolphins have had a disappointing season. The Buccaneers are hanging on by a thread in the playoff race in a battle of 2 Florida teams. James Yarko of Locked On Bucks and Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins talk about which one of these teams will come out with a big win. And for the Bucks, they'll need it. For the Dolphins, maybe they can play spoiler.
Kyle Krabs, Locked On Dolphins. James Yarcho, Locked On Bucks. And I would be a horrible host, James, if I didn't give you the chance first, give you the floor. Give me a game prediction, give me a bold prediction, something that you think you can plant the flag on and say, I think this is going to happen on Sunday.
I think this is going to be for anyone in their fantasy championship that has Devon Achane. I'd like to be the first to congratulate you on winning your fantasy league. I think this is going to be the Devon Achane game. And not only because he's such a good running back and the Bucs have just struggled in stopping the run, since the bye week, but because he is so explosive and he's a danger out of the backfield in the receiving game. And the Bucs have just not had an answer for running backs in the passing game this season. Jahmyr Gibbs destroyed them. You had Bijan Robinson destroyed them twice. You've had Travion Henderson destroyed. Like it's been nonstop. So, when I was speaking to Julian of Locked On Panthers, he said, I don't see how the Bucs can lose to Miami with Quinn Ewers being the quarterback. I said, they absolutely can, because the Dolphins don't need Quinn Ewers to win this game. They just need Devon Achane. And I think he's in for a massive, massive game. And that's really going to be able to give Miami control of the tempo. It's going to force the Bucs to be one-dimensional, and I think that's something that they'll be able to take advantage of. So that's my prediction, is that Achane is going to be just an absolute force on Sunday.
I selfishly want to see it for the obvious reasons, but also the fact that he's 106 yards away from the second highest single season rushing total in Dolphins franchise history. Like, he's been on that kind of pace. He ain't going to catch Ricky Williams had 1853 back in 2002. He's not going to touch that, but he has a chance to pass 2003 Ricky Williams with 106 rushing yards. So it's been a really special season for him. Was named to the Pro Bowl on Tuesday, so it was a great accolade for him. I think that's a great call out, because so much of the Dolphins offense runs through Devon Achane. So probably a safe bet there. I would say the first team that logs a turnover is going to win the game. And more often than not, unfortunately, those scripts have not been kind to Miami. If you lose a possession, well, Miami had this stretch where Mike McDaniel for 3 years, he deferred every time he won the coin toss. And then they were struggling offensively and they started taking the coin toss. And then if you lose a possession in the first half, and if Mike McDaniel knows they're going to get the ball to start the second half and we've now lost a possession, things kind of snowball on them, right? Like, it gets a little weird. We kind of get away from some things that are working. We start playing with a little bit more urgency, and mistakes compound. And it's been a really frustrating common thread, really, for Miami in the Mike McDaniel era. So if Miami is able to have that early rushing success, and then Tampa has a turnover and Miami can parlay that into a lead, I think that's the game script. Like that's how they take care of business in the games that they've won this year. But if the Bucs get the first turnover and Mike feels the pressure of two score difference early with a young quarterback, I think it will force Miami back into some bad habits, and it will lead to tipping the scales in Tampa's favor.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And as far as winning the coin toss, the Bucs have kind of bounced back and forth. It seems like typically they would defer. That was their style. But when they felt that the offense needed a jump start, they did, take the ball first recently and marched right down the field and scored. What the offense did after that, we won't talk about. But yeah, I kind of feel like, the Bucs are in a similar situation, and you saw it snowball for them against Carolina. You have the ball, you have the lead. It's a 2-minute drill. You have all 3 of your timeouts to be able to march down the field and add to it before getting the second half kickoff. And instead, you go 3 and out. You give it to the Panthers, and all of a sudden, Tedero McMillan's in the end zone. And now you're coming out in the second half facing a deficit instead of a multi-score lead. So it's Kyle, this is the winner of this team is going to be whichever one looks like the more competent football team. And to me, it's a complete toss-up. Like, both of these teams are just they're trying so hard to not succeed, and it boggles my mind.
Yeah, it's just 2 hosts oozing with confidence for their football teams here as we go through here. I had another prediction for this game. Any Dolphins sacks in this game will come from the inside linebackers or the defensive tackles. You will pitch a shutout on the edge. The Dolphins have had a really frustrating stretch where Bradley Chubb had he didn't play particularly well in the first month, but he had 3 sacks in the first month. He had a performance incentive at 6 sacks. He got that. It's been really quiet since for Bradley Chubb. His best game was the first game after Jalen Phillips got traded at the trade deadline. And it's been a disappointing couple of weeks for him. Chop Robinson has got a sack, split a sack with Kenneth Grant in this past game that they played against the Bengals, but it was Burrow trying to step up in the pocket. Chop is far too often getting rode past the top of the arc and is playing behind the quarterback, where the defensive tackles, there's been a lot of focus on the chemistry of the twists and the stunts and the games that you can play. And they have 3 rookies that are playing meaningful snaps. Now, Zach Sealer's come alive. He's logged a sack in 3 consecutive games on the interior. I know Tampa Bay's a little banged up on the inside, but I will say these Bucs offensive tackles will pitch a shutout against Miami's edge rushers as far as pressures and sacks in this game.
Yeah, and every Bucs fan listening to this just started like twitching a little bit because all of the pressure has been coming from the interior because Cody Mauch is not out there, because Ben Bredesen is not out there, and you're dealing with these backup guards, and it has stunted the growth of Graham Barton as a center this season.
He played some time at tackle this year too, didn't he?
Yeah, opened the season at tackle when Tristan Wirfs wasn't playing. So, all of those things combined, that's where all the pressure is coming. That's why you're not seeing Baker push the ball down the field as often as you would probably like. It's why he's had some turnover problems. It's why he's been sacked. And so if that's the strength of the Dolphins pass rush going up against the weakness of the Bucs protection, it's going to be a really, really long day for Baker Mayfield and this Buccaneers offense.
Yeah, it's be a good litmus test for these young Miami defensive tackles. So that'll be a matchup that I have circled. James, any parting thoughts before we get out of here?
It's a game that I was excited for when the schedule came out, and now I'm excited to watch just to see what direction are these teams going, because I feel like I know where the Bucs are going. I feel like they're going into a new era of Buccaneers football, but do they have enough in the tank to try to still make the postseason and give themselves a puncher's chance?
You can find Kyle over at Locked On Dolphins. You can find James over at Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Rounding out the 1 o'clock slate of games, it is the Bengals and the Cardinals, 2 teams that, again, are not in the playoff picture and looking for answers. So James Rapine of Locked On Bengals and Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals talk about which one of these teams will come out with a win.
All right, let's keep things rolling with a playoff preview. Like I said, it's Bengals, it's Cardinals. It could really be a fun game, a back and forth offensive spectacular, plenty of fireworks. Sign me up for that. If it's meaningless football from a postseason standpoint, well, then I'll take a 70-point game between the 2 teams, both teams in the 30s going back and forth. What would you say, Alex, are the keys for the Cardinals to snap their losing streak and get on the winning side?
Figure out wide receiver 1. Like see, the thing is, because they're going to have to outscore the Bengals. You're not going to be able to stop the locomotive. And I say this with longer lasting impressions. Like we say tongue in cheek, like, yeah, this is going to be a fun game. Okay. if Marvin Harrison Jr. gets the wide receiver one moniker ripped away from him by Michael Wilson, that's going to have lingering effects. Now, with Drew Petzing most likely not coming back as OC, it may be 6-1, and it may not matter that much. If there's a new offense, it's going to be fun and more West Coasty and stuff. But this is now becoming a thing with Marvin Harrison Jr. Michael Wilson had the acrobatic Cirque du Soleil catch that ended up being a touchdown last week. Marvin Harrison Jr. tried to catch a ball like you were a 6-year-old catching a kickball when you were playing kickball with the ball super big. And you had
what's going with him? Like, what's up with him?
I don't know. He makes magical things look super easy, and other things, elementary things, look not. Like, this is how I tweeted it out. And it's not exact, but for Bengals fans especially, this will kind of translate. Michael Wilson is Jacoby Brissett. Marvin Harrison Jr. is Kyler Murray. Where it's like the ceiling for Marv is definitely higher. We've seen magic, just like with Kyler. But if you want the metronome, if you want that equilibrium wide receiver, Michael Wilson can run every route. He catches contested balls. He's 6'3". He's not the fastest, but he just produces when everybody knows he's getting the ball, which has happened over the last 6 weeks. That's the best I can describe it. But yeah, it's frustrating. It's because Jamar Chase came in and he's like, I'm the guy. I'm a Hall of Famer immediately on the field. And you thought Marv could be something like that, and it hasn't been close.
Is there any scenario where he's not a Cardinal next year?
No, absolutely not. Unless it's like mid-season and like State Farm Stadium's on fire and it's like everybody's gone. We don't know which way up is potentially, but I think with all of the influx of Kyler and Jacoby and him being injured and this season being lost, I think next year will be the telltale.
Yeah, it's just wild that we're here, because a lot of Bengals fans obviously watched him at Ohio State, and he just felt so safe and like he was going to be like walk into the league and be like current T. Higgins. You know, like just big, strong, fast, physical. And it's just, it's surprising. It is, right? At least to me. But
it's not because he's a good kid. Like, it just sucks. It's
no,
like,
I know.
Yeah, the weight on the world on your shoulders, that's fine. It's not an original story. And the story's not written yet. Like, people say Malik Neighbors. I've played more games than Malik Neighbors in the NFL. You know, it's like the best abilities, availability in a lot of senses, and he's missed time after their bye week, but story's not done yet. The story's not done yet. Now, for me, defensively, Mike Gesicki and Chase Brown are my two that the Cardinals need to stop. Like, obviously, you're going to try and curtail Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Tight ends with the Cardinals, bad. Mike Gesicki, Joe Burrow, good. Chase Brown, I mean, he's a Bijan Robinson light, right? I mean, he's kind of the Bijan Robinson had almost 170 all-purpose yards and a touchdown last week. Chase Brown could mirror that as well. So this offense is just a nightmare for the Arizona Cardinals going in.
He could, and his confidence is really high right now. He's over 1,200 yards from scrimmage for the year. Had 6 straight games with 100 yards from scrimmage earlier this season. It got snapped a few weeks ago, but got back on that side of things against the Dolphins. No, I think that's a big part of it. Like, if you're able to run the football and operate through Chase Brown, it's just going to open things up for Jamar and T. And it really becomes a pick your poison type of offense. And that's it. If Joe Burrow plays the way Joe Burrow played against the Dolphins, where he's just super clean, super efficient, accurate, where you're going to put up points. And so that's an easy one that needs to happen. All eyes are on this defense. And I don't know if they can do anything to convince me that they don't need significant changes in the offseason. It's just been so bad. But if they can show some sort of, hey, let's not let Trey McBride have 15 catches on us, because he very well could. That would be a huge key. In the turnovers, they're a defense. They've gave up yards even last week, and then suddenly they were able to force a couple of turnovers, and they forced them. It wasn't like Quinn Ewers just threw them the ball. I mean, they were pretty nice plays. Batted play might not be a great decision, but if you can force a couple of turnovers, it clearly goes a long way for this defense that is vulnerable and could give up plenty of points.
Who's the best defensive player for the Bengals?
Well, it's obviously would have been Trey. It's not. DJ Turner, their corner. And that would be that's going to be a fun matchup if he's been drawing the best receiver and guarding him. And so how do they go with that? What do they do? And then Dax Hill's been playing really well on the outside over the past month as well. He moved from nickel outside when Cam Taylor-Britt got hurt. So that corner tandem versus the Cardinals wide receivers could be interesting as well.
Yeah. I think this is just man, what if things panned out the way they were supposed to, and we're looking at a Week 17 game with two teams on the fringe of playoffs? This just have completely different aura around, because the popcorn's there, like the matchup's going to be fun, and it's just damn it, may as well be a preseason game. The last time the Cardinals played the Bengals, it was Bengals had their way with them at State Farm Stadium a couple years ago. Was that last year or 2 years ago?
It was 2 years ago. Yeah, because the Bengals needed it. Yeah, they were up against it a bit. They needed to win that game.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. It's I'm excited to watch the wide receivers for the Bengals on the same field as the Cardinals, because this is a huge test for Will Johnson. Like, if he's going to lead this charge, you heard it here first on December 20, whenever we're recording this. I'm not going to tell you when, that Budda Baker is probably going to be out after this year. I would there are a couple tea leaves. I don't have insider information. I'm reading human things. The fact that he got voted as a Pro Bowler in one of his worst years, like, other teams are watching that there's blood in the water with this team, and Budda Baker could be had. And he tweeted out last home game, thank you Cardinals fans. He didn't say for this year. He left it vague. So Will Johnson may need to be the face of this defense moving forward come next year. Yeah. It's still early to tell that.
Budda would be a trade, you're saying?
He's got 1 year left. He got an extension. They added 1 year. There's an out afterwards, but it's an obvious, trade for, restructure, extend, add another year. He's going to be 30.
Got it.
How for those who don't know who Budda Baker is, he is one of the most respected players, especially on a bad team in the NFL. Getting voted to a Pro Bowl makes me think other teams are looking like, hey, it's a perfect time to go get him.
Yeah. Yeah, could totally see it. You mentioned it, and I was like, oh, Budda Baker, right? And so other teams are certainly going to feel that way and have interest, man. It's hopefully it's a fun game. I do think it's going to be fun. I'll be there in person, so it better be fun. It better be worth the time. Don't fail me, Bengals, Cardinals. But unfortunate, you're right, that the popcorn that could be had doesn't have any kind of postseason ties.
In the 30s? Do you think we're looking in the 30s?
It feels that way, doesn't it?
I hope so.
Maybe 30s, 20s, one way or the other. Like, if there's some
Cardinals can put up 30 points for once, yeah.
Yeah. Have they not? When's the...
They put up 30 against Dallas, I believe. But no, it's not been great. It's not been great.
James is over at Locked On Bengals. Alex is over at Locked On Cardinals, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. That'll do it for the 1 p.m. slate of games, but it will not do it for us here on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Coming up, we'll dive into a couple of 4 o'clock window games, because that's how many there are in the 4 o'clock window. Just 2 this week, so stay tuned. Plenty coming up on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. First, the show is brought to you by Gametime. NFL season is in full swing, and there's nothing like being at the game. The crowd noise, the energy, and cheering alongside other fans. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium hits different. The frustrating part has always been getting tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, and watching prices change right at checkout. That's why the Gametime app gives the advantage back to fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. And the app is incredibly intuitive. Browsing, comparing, and buying tickets took just minutes. And one of my favorite features is being able to see the view from my seat before buying, so there are no surprises. And the zone deals, they stood out to me because you pick the section and Gametime picks the seats, and you save even more. And that is absolutely incredible. Take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today and get back to being there live. Continuing on in the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, Kevin Allstreicher still here with you. We talked about the 1 p.m. slate of games, a lot of those in Week 17. Now we're going to dive into the 4 o'clock window, which only has 2 games, starting off with the Eagles and the Bills. Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen. I think a lot of people anticipated this was going to be possibly the Super Bowl matchup this season, but both these teams have looked a little underwhelming, but still both in the playoff picture. So Louis DiBiase of Locked On Eagles and Joe Marino of Locked On Bills talk keys to victory and so much more.
Welcome back, folks. Joe Marino from Locked On Bills, of course, joined by Louis DiBiase of Locked On Eagles. A couple heavyweight teams matching up here late in the season. let's play again. Let's do it again in February. Let's fast forward. I don't need to see the next 5-6 weeks. Let's just get to February and play this game at Levi Stadium. All right, when you think about the path for Philly to get this dub as they come in as a slight road underdogs, I think the last I checked, the spread was 1.5. So, what do they say? The assumed 3 points for the home team. And so I guess in Philly, they'd be favored by 4.5. I'm not a math guy,
Right.
but Eagles road underdogs nonetheless, your keys to victory.
Yeah, for me, there's 3 things the Eagles have to do to beat the Bills. And this is an important one. Again, if this was week 8 or week 9, I think the stakes would be higher. And I wish this game was earlier in the year, but getting that 2 seed's important. So for me, I think we talked about it with the matchups to watch with Allen's health. Don't get gashed on the ground the way you did during that 3-game losing streak. I think that was an issue against the Cowboys. Specifically against the Bears on Black Friday, that was a huge issue. And then on Monday Night Football against LA. So if James Cook and Josh Allen are going to gash you on the ground and you're going to lose the time of possession battle, the Bills hold a lead all game, that's going to be a problem. That's not the way the Eagles are built to attack teams. They don't play well playing from behind. And so the defense, that's going to be the big thing. Jalen Carter coming back obviously is huge in limiting Cook. I think number 2, continuing to use empty set and under center formations on offense. Since, again, it was the Raiders and Commanders, so you have to contextualize everything. But since they started using more under center looks, they started marrying the passing and rushing concepts. Because it feels like earlier in the year, under center, they run. Shotgun, they pass. It was too obvious and predictable. Lately, it's been less predictable. They've been, I think, marrying concepts a lot better. Under center, empty set, Jalen Hurts is so much more comfortable seeing the field. As a mobile quarterback as well, I think he's more effective in empty set. Use those things formationally that have kind of been your identity in this turnaround of the last 2.5 weeks. And then penalties and negative plays. They've been, Joe, that sounds obvious, but penalties specifically have killed this offense. It feels like anytime they're gaining some sort of momentum, there's a holding call, there's a illegal formation or a personal foul. This team's been very undisciplined on both sides of the ball, but specifically on offense. So it sounds obvious, but those mistakes, those turnovers, those penalties, shooting yourselves in the foot, that has killed the Eagles all year. And so last week was a good step in the right direction of limiting those kind of mistakes, but this is a really good litmus test matchup against a good football team. Let's see if that was just because you played 2 bad teams, or if you really are all the way back. So this is a big one.
I think those are good keys. I'm a big under center guy. It's as a guy I didn't play in the NFL or anything like that, but I have some experience with D-line stuff, and when they're under center,
harder on a defense. I don't like just in shotgun telling you what's happening every time. It just
especially with like Saquon, if you're gonna run the ball and he's taking it from that static alignment as opposed to pressing, like getting forward.
Exactly.
I think we're aligned on that. All right, here's what I have for the Bills to get this win and maintain their chances of winning the AFC East and forcing New England to beat Miami. Number 1, it's got to be really about population of the ball when Saquon Barkley has it. I'm very concerned about him hitting explosive runs against this Bills run defense. And 25% of the runs for Saquon this year go for less than a yard. The Bills need to live in that world. Like, how do they do that? They got to build a wall. They got to get off blocks. They got to tackle. But those explosive runs have been such a big part of Saquon's career and even this year as well. So, can you run stunt? Can you gap exchange? What do you have to do to make sure that Saquon Barkley doesn't get ahead of steam and getting into the second and third levels of your defense? Number 2 is I do think that the Bills offensive plan needs to be run heavy and attacking the edges. I think a lot of what this Eagles team has in the spine of the defense at D tackle, at backer with Bond, and even Reed Blankenship, I think is a really good downhill safety.
Yep.
And I don't think you want to make this a straight ahead run game. I think you want to attack the edges. They're a little lighter on the edges with Hunt and Smith. There's explosive players. They have redeeming qualities, but if you can start getting bodies at them and then forcing Bond and Campbell and guys to start working lateral, I think that's going to be your best opportunity to be successful running the football. In fact, I have some metrics on this. Philly's run defense is 9th in EPA on inside the tackles runs, 17th outside the tackles. And so, look, they're not horrible in either regard, but I think you have a better shot. And the Bills are very good at kind of reducing formational width. They'll put a bunch of tight ends and blocking receivers on the edge and, really stress that. And I think the Bills need to try to do that against Philly. And then lastly, I think this offensive passing attack needs to be rooted in play action. It's hard to poke holes in the Eagles defense are really good, but they've given up the 4th most yards per play against play action passes at 8.3. They're 7th worst in defensive EPA per pass against play action. I think you have to leverage that, and the Bills are very good at executing play action. You have to leverage that in this game and see if you can't, move the ball and score enough points to get out of there with a win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Eagles secondary has been the strength of this football team this year. I mean, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean both made the Pro Bowl. But yeah, against play action, they've struggled. And I think Adoree Jackson, he's been solid, right? I think he's been, as good as Darius Slay and Isaiah Rodgers were last year, but he is still the weak link of that secondary. So if I'm the Bills as well, attacking him, I think, is probably the right move. And Marcus Epps at safety, they have a couple weak links in that secondary. So I don't think this is going to be, Joe, like a 17-10 low-scoring game, but it's going to be a close one for sure. Hopefully we get this one again. I think the NFL has been kind of waiting for it, and we'll see. But it's a tough road. This has been a weird year in the NFL.
You mentioned Darius Slay. I forgot about that situation.
Well, you guys are holding him hostage from the Eagles, so yeah.
Well, what do you think the Bills should do? I mean,
yeah, no. I mean, it's funny though because the Eagles definitely were interested.
100%
going to pick him up on waivers.
That was the whole plan.
Yep,
and the Bills ruined it.
Slay's like, I'm not going to Buffalo at this time of my career, and yeah, that's the situation. Honestly, the Eagles, the Bills might have done them a favor though because Adoree Jackson has played really well since, and I think he's probably a better option right now. So
you're going to know better than me, but I thought the series of moves, whether it was the Jair Alexander thing, the acquisition of Michael Carter, kind of that thought of can we get Cooper DeJean maybe on the outside. I think like all of that has been Adoree get it going, and I think maybe the last 4 or 5 games he's really turned the corner.
Thank God that he did, because if not, like that was the idea was let's just get Cooper on the outside, and I think DeJean's obviously a much better slot corner, but we need somebody reliable in the slot because Adoree Jackson, Keely Ringo, Jacorian Bennett, everyone they threw on the boundary, it just was not working the first half of the year, but Adoree has figured some things out, and that's huge because they were going to claim Slay and probably start him, and Slay hasn't been that great this year in Pittsburgh, so I think the best thing that could have happened.
The fit is really different, right? A man-heavy scheme in Pittsburgh zone match with Vic. I mean, come on. Slay can still do that.
Absolutely.
So, but, that's the NFL. You get put on waivers, you get claimed.
Absolutely.
Well, that's what's got to be done. So we'll see if I think the Eagles have a little petty in them, so it wouldn't be a surprise to me.
Teams do. Yeah.
For sure. And that's why I said at the beginning, like I think Josh Allen should probably sit this game. He hadn't beaten the Eagles, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think he wants to go try to do that. And we'll see how it plays out. And that whole Jake Elliott thing is also really weird to me. I tweeted out after when they went for 2, I didn't think it was like to do anything, just try to run up the score. I think it was a shot at Jake Elliott, but it's like, hey, this guy's been struggling. He's 5 misses in the last 5 games. Let him kick the extra point and get some confidence.
No, I agree. The Eagles definitely have a kicker problem, which is not good heading into the playoffs. He missed 3 kicks in the first half last week, and it was the same kick, a left hook every single time. He was great the last time the Eagles and Bills played. He hit a huge
we remember.
One.
Yeah.
So Elliott's very hot and cold. Last year, even he struggled in the regular season and found his way in the postseason, but it's not very comforting with the way he's kicking heading into the postseason. So we'll see. Hopefully he bounces back.
You kicker issues. You've had the same
That's
kicker.
True. I was going to say
the Bills were on their 3rd of the year. Michael Badgley came in there, missed the landing zone, doinked an extra
I'm preaching
point.
to the choir here.
They've worked out 3 kickers this week. Let's hope this thing doesn't come down to kickers. Let's make it about these great players: Allen, Hurts, Barkley, Cooks, and the likes.
Louis over at Locked On Eagles. Joe's over at Locked On Bills, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Rounding out the 4 p.m. slate of games, it's the Raiders and the Giants, 2 teams that are looking toward the future. But hey, you can still get momentum during the season for some of your younger players. So Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants and your boy Q of Locked On Raiders talk about which one of these young teams could get some momentum with a win.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Crossover Thursday, Locked On Giants, Locked On Raiders. I'm Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants. He is Q Myers, your boy Q of Locked On Raiders. And Q, let's talk about the keys to victory. I know the fans of each team probably don't want to hear this segment, but we've got to do it anyway. We'll start with the Raiders. What do the Raiders need to do to pull off a win?
Well, they need to protect the ball. That's been a big bugaboo of the Raiders all season long. Geno Smith has turned the ball over at a rapid pace. So, 15 interceptions on the season. Last week, he threw a pick six early to kind of set the tone for that Raiders and Texans game. And without that pick six, the Raiders probably win that game. So he's got to protect the ball. He's got to be smarter with it than he is. A lot of times he'll get reckless. With that being said, he still had a decent game. Matter of fact, a good game last week, except for that pick six. That's the first and foremost. That's the biggest key for the Raiders. And it's really been the biggest key all season long is protect the ball. And they just have not done a very good job about that. Getting off the field on third down. That's also been an issue, especially third and long. Like, Patricia, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 15. Like, that's automatic. You're off the field downs. That's the ball's getting back to the offense downs. And more times than not, the Raiders find ways to blow that down and end up, letting them get a first down. And it's sometimes it's by penalty, but more times it's not. It's just bad coverage, bad play, bad defense, So they've got to get off the field on third down, 3rd and long, pin their ears back and do what they got to do. And there's been times where they give up that 3rd and long and you kind of look at Max and he has that come on, like we got to be better than that. That was 3rd and 18. How do we give up 22 on that? And so, he's going to bring it all the time. There's no slowing Max down. The only way you can slow Max down is have him stay at home, not even be on the sideline, just stay at home, right? That's the only way that he won't affect the game because he is just that guy. So they've got to get off the field on third down. And, I'll say the final key to victory is finishing drives, right? They struggle a lot of times in the red zone. They'll end up settling for field goals as opposed to getting touchdowns. And Genty's had a good knack at getting in the end zone, so you can respect that. Like I said, 5 touchdowns on the ground, 5 touchdowns through the air. Bowers, 7 touchdowns to lead the Raiders, but he's not playing. So who's going to step up? If it's not Genty getting in the end zone, who's going to step up and be the next guy? That's a big question that I have because, again, I don't know the answer to it outside of number 2. And their short yardage is not great when they're trying to pick it up. So if they get down there by the goal line, it's not automatic just, hand it to Genty, he's going to punch it in the end zone. Short yardage gaining is a struggle for the Raiders. So I want to see how they're going to step up in the absence of Brock Bowers. Who's going to step up and be that other weapon in the red zone? So I think it's real easy. Even 3 keys for the Raiders if they're going to win this game on Sunday against the Giants. They got to protect the ball. They've got to get out the field on 3rd and long, and they've got to be able to finish off drives with touchdowns as opposed to field goals. How about the Giants?
You could pretty much say the same thing for the Giants because these are the same problems the Giants have had. They've been lousy in the red zone. They're ranked 28th in red zone conversion rates, something like 46.94%. Third down, they've just been a little bit better, but not great. They're ranked 19th, I believe, on third down. But, the thing that I'll start with as far as keys, and this is going to be outside the box thinking, the Giants got to stop beating themselves. Right. They've had drop passes in, inopportune moments. They've had mistakes. I mean, you look at last week's game, for example, Darius Slayton drops a pass that would have gone for at least 20 yards. All right. Theo Johnson tips a pass that hit him in the hands and gets picked off. Abdul Carter gets called for a neutral zone infraction that wipes a touchdown off the board. The Giants are not good enough to overcome their mistakes, and yet they keep making them, and it keeps coming back to haunt them. You can go back and look at any game they have lost this year, and you can point to 1 or 2 mistakes that just popped up. And look, nobody's expecting a perfect game, but some of these mistakes, a pre-snap penalty, for example, which the Giants are up there amongst league leaders, they all add up. And they just, like I said, the team is just not good enough to overcome this stuff. We talked about the run defense. The Giants have got to find a way to wrap up Gentry. Plain and simple. No bad angles, no arm tackles. Don't let this guy run wild on you, especially if he gets to the second level, which is where he does the bulk of his damage. And the run defense has just been awful. And it's weird to say that considering, they've got Dexter Lawrence up front, who has always been a pretty good run stopper, but Dexter Lawrence is just not having a Dexter Lawrence type of year this year, which, nobody, maybe it's his elbow, we don't know, but it's an off year for him. So that's definitely a key. They mentioned the pass rush. The Raiders offensive line is compromised by injury. So you would expect for Abdul Carter and Brian Burns having a heck of a year, the only Giants Pro Bowler, you would expect for those two guys to feast. And then I'll throw in one more for you. Special teams. The Giants special teams. Now, last week, they didn't hurt them. But the last few weeks before that, one mistake, whether it be a broken down coverage, guys not maintaining their lanes, a missed field goal, a kick out of bounds, whatever the case may be, special teams has got to do its part, because it just seems like at least once, not counting last week, because again, there wasn't really anything that bit them from special teams, but there's always been something the last several weeks that has just come up and made you say, special teams, folks. And that's been very frustrating as well. So you have that. And then, like I said, the defensive secondary, the Giants defensive secondary, can they please make a game-changing play? Now, last week they had a couple of turnovers. One was nullified, like I said, but we need more of that if the Giants are going to pull this one off, because as you mentioned, Geno Smith has been somewhat of a turnover machine. You've got to take advantage of that. It's that simple.
I heard that. Well, I'll tell you what, you talking about special teams and their struggles. That's music to my ears. I'll tell you a dirty little secret. The Raiders have not had a kick return touchdown since Jacoby Ford did it. Jacoby Ford did it in 2010.
Wow.
So you probably remember Jacoby Ford playing in the New York market, right? Remember there's a time where he played with the Jets? That was after the Raiders. He was the last Raider to have a kickoff return touchdown. That was so many moons ago. There's teams that have sometimes two in the same game. The Raiders haven't had one in years. So I've been begging for it on every show, every platform that I'm on. Can I just see one? At some point, can I see one kick return to the house? They've had a couple that have gotten close, but they haven't taken one to the house. So maybe this is the game. Maybe this
Watch it be the game too. Watch that happen, because that would just be so typical of the Giants to get that up. And I'll tell you, I'll remember that little secret, and I'll be like, if that happens, I'll be like pulling my hair out and going, "Oh my gosh!" Because you've got
that's historic. If it happens on Sunday, that's historic. That's a nugget.
If that happens, just because you wished it into existence. So.
Yes. I've been
All right. Before we wrap up, let's just do quick predictions. The Raiders, at last check, according to our friends over at FanDuel, a 1.5-point favorite. Probably the home field advantage, I would think. But what's your gut on this week's game? Who wins?
My gut is, as much as Raider Nation is not going to want to hear it, my gut feeling is they're going to win. I just feel like that the Raiders have a better team, and especially based off right now and based off what they showed last week against the Houston Texans. I feel like that they are going to kind of try to build off of that. And based off what the Giants did or didn't do last week, I feel like that they're probably going to come into this game with that same kind of approach where Jackson Dart's going to be real protective and conservative. And I just don't think that's a good recipe for a Giants win. So I really think that the Raiders are going to probably win this game. And I know Raider Nation is not going to want to hear that, but that's just the gut feeling right now as we do this.
Yeah. Now, see, I'm kind of torn on this one, because I said I would not pick the Giants to win a game the rest of the season until I saw evidence otherwise,
right,
that, to feel good about picking them.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, because, we're talking the Tank Bowl, so to speak, watch the Giants win this one, because everybody, in the fan base seems to want that number one pick.
Right.
And the Giants, they're like, again, we don't care about that. We just want to win the game. So watch them pull off the upset, because that would just be the icing on the cake for a Mish Bowl team. And, look, seriously speaking, though, the Giants, for the most part, they have been competitive this season. I don't want Raider fans to think that the Giants go out there and they flop around like a fish out of water. They have been competitive. They just haven't finished games. So they've come close a couple of times. Now they're playing an opponent who's kind of on their level, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is the week that they finish the game. Who knows?
Yeah, and look, honestly, I would have picked the Giants to win the game if I hadn't seen the Raiders play the Houston Texans last week. If they hadn't played at the level that they did, I would be like, I said weeks ago, the Raiders aren't going to win another game. After they lost to Cleveland, I was like, it's a wrap. They're not going to win anymore. But then I saw last week, and so that made me feel like, yeah, there's a good chance that they could win this game. And hell, there's a good chance they could win next week against Kansas City, who looks like they're not interested in winning another game as well. So we'll see. It's the reason why they play the games, and we'll see how it all plays out, when they hit the field on Sunday.
Patricia's over at Locked On Giants. Q's over at Locked On Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So a couple of awesome primetime games to get to here on the Ultimate NFL pregame show. So stay tuned. We got plenty coming your way. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports, bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. While we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. And PrizePicks is adding an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. You can choose from a huge range of unique stats, fantasy score, field goals attempted, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Moving right along here on the Ultimate NFL pregame show, Kevin Ostreicher is still talking Week 17 NFL action. We checked off the 1 o'clock games, checked off the 4 o'clock games. Let's dive into some primetime battles here. Starting off with this one between the Chicago Bears and the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, what a year for both of these teams. Lauren Cox of Locked On Bears and Eric Crocker of Locked On 49ers talk about which one of these two incredible stories will come out with a win on Sunday.
All right, Eric, as we start to wrap up our crossover Thursday, I know the 49ers, the betting line on FanDuel has shifted a little bit, but the 49ers have been favored by 3 the last I looked. I think it was down to 1 at some point. It's hovered around 2 or 3 with them as the home team. Not surprised given 49ers being hot on a 5-game losing or winning streak, and the Bears, as much as the Bears are doing well, like there's still doubts about Chicago of like, oh, well, they took a Hail Mary, or not a Hail Mary, but took a late touchdown against Green Bay to win that game, and they kind of had if, ands, or buts here and there about their success. But do you feel like with where San Francisco is right now, like you're fully confident, like, no, this is a team that is healthy and firing on all cylinders, and like from your perspective should be the better team on Sunday, or where's your biggest levels of concern in there?
Well, I think the 49ers should be better with the experience of playing in these games, right? For Chicago, you got a new coaching staff coming over. You got a young quarterback who hasn't been in these situations at the NFL level, at least consistently, especially late in the year where these games really matter. And the 49ers have been there, done that. Where the 49ers lack is, I mean, they are decimated by injuries on the defensive side of the ball. And then the guys that aren't injured, they are super young. So, it's an interesting game because I don't know from week to week what version of the 49ers I'm going to get. Now, we just talked about the offense going crazy, right? But again, a wounded secondary, 49ers did a great job, an amazing job of really taking advantage of that versus a team that can take the ball away. Maybe you don't move the ball down the field as effortless, and then you still have that same defense out there that's prone to giving up a lot of plays, a lot of yards. I mean, the 49ers made Cam Ward and the Tennessee Titans look like a very, very, very competent offense, and they haven't been that for a majority of the season. So those are the things that worry me a little bit. From week to week, I don't know how the defense is going to play to really help the 49ers. And then on the offensive side of the ball, are they going to be able to run the ball? And then are they playing against a team that is going to be able to take advantage of that? Because that's another thing. When you look at some of these teams that the 49ers have played during this 5-game winning streak, the Colts, they just rolling out Old Man Rivers with a wounded secondary. You have the Tennessee Titans, one of the worst teams in the NFL. The Browns, one of the worst teams in the NFL. The Carolina Panthers, who are figuring things out, but they're not great. And then the Arizona Cardinals, one of the worst teams in the NFL. So not over this 5-game winning streak, but they are doing what they're supposed to do, which is win games. The issue is, the Chicago Bears are winning a lot of games as well. And now it's going to be more good on good. What do the 49ers look like in that situation?
It feels to me like we could oversimplify it, but a lot of this is going to boil down to just like, if Brock Purdy doesn't put the ball in harm's way or turn it over, the 49ers should be able to score plenty of points against this Bears defense and be fine. And if he does put the ball in harm's way and turns it over a couple of times, then the Bears should be able to make enough stops and get enough points on their side against the 49ers defense to win this game. And so I guess I'm curious, if we put turnovers aside, it's kind of like, it's obviously like the huge storyline for Chicago. Like, say Brock Purdy doesn't turn the ball over at all. Is there anything else that 49ers should be worried about? Like, presumably, if he doesn't turn the ball over, they're good to go. Or is the running game enough of a concern there? But like, if he's dialed in and not turning the ball over, like that should be enough for San Francisco in theory, right? Like, is there anything else the Bears should be like holding on to? Like, oh no, they can also win by doing X.
Oh, yeah, special teams. 49ers have been terrific this season on special teams. They've forced turnovers on special teams. They've had terrific returns on special teams. We saw both of those things happen in the Colts game, and I feel like it's happening consistently. The Browns, not a great team. We know that. But the 49ers kicked their butts on special teams, forcing some bad returns. There was a fumble as well on a kickoff return or a punt return. The 49ers are getting big chunk returns. They haven't gotten the touchdown. They've gotten very close, but Sky Moore has been doing a terrific job as of late with his returns. So I think for the Bears, I think one of their keys to victory has to be slow down the 49ers special teams. And it doesn't just stop there. The kicker, Eddie Pinheiro, who came over to the 49ers after they released their previous kicker, he just missed his first field goal of the season for the 49ers, and that was him attempting a 64-yard kick. He's been money, 100% up until that point. So, I mean, the 49ers special teams, a unit that has not been very good for the 49ers, has been excellent this year, and I think that is maybe an underrated aspect to why the 49ers have consistently been in such great positions in a lot of these games.
Bears fans are intimately familiar with San Francisco 49ers kicker Eddie Pinheiro, former Chicago Bears legend, and also just like 49ers kickers in general. There's been this weird do-si-do of like Robbie Gould, Chicago to San Francisco, and then when the 49ers moved on from Jake Moody, the Bears brought him in this season and had him kick for them a couple times, and then, of course, Pinheiro now a 49er after having been a Chicago Bear. So, and now the whole Cairo Santos thing for Chicago has been a little bit of a roller coaster. So, yeah, Bears special teams has giveth and taketh away for sure. There have been times when they give up way too long returns that have killed the Bears. And then last week against the 49ers, against the Packers, the Bears recovered an onside kick and hit some really clutch field goals in windy conditions. So that's been a super big wild card of like, sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's a real problem. And I worry about in a game like this against a playoff caliber team, I mean, literally a playoff team, not just caliber in the 49ers, that like the margin of error for Chicago is going to be so tiny. And then when the Bears had 9 penalties for 105 yards last week, and if you have any kind of like a bunch of penalties and some special teams mistakes, like that can be the difference in a game like this. When even if Brock Purdy gives you a turnover or two, like if you get in your own way to not be able to take advantage of the other team's mistakes, that's the difference between a playoff team advancing and even in the regular season and a playoff team either going home or going down in seeding here with just 2 games left to go in the season. So I think this is going to be a really fun matchup that previews what we can see out of both these teams in the postseason.
You can find Eric over at Locked On 49ers. You can find Lauren over at Locked On Bears, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Rounding things out, final primetime matchup of the week, it is the Rams and the Falcons. The Rams are going to look to pick up a win after that tough loss to Seattle. Meanwhile, the Falcons, well, they're just looking for some momentum here. So you have Travis Rogers of Locked On Rams and Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons talking keys to victory, key storylines, and so much more.
So wrapping up today's crossover Thursday here on Locked On Falcons and Locked On Rams presented by PrizePicks, let's get into some of the keys to victory. And I know for Travis, one of the big ones for me is going to be Bijan Robinson. We haven't talked about Bijan Robinson yet, and he's going to be potentially one of the best players on the football field besides players like Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua, and has a real big opportunity to really help this game because I think, as you mentioned, I don't think the Falcons want to get into a shootout with the Rams because I feel like the Rams are much more better equipped with Sean McVay at the play caller, at the coordinator position, and with Drake London not 100% compared to Puka Nacua. Like all that favors the Rams, that if they get into a shootout with the Falcons, they're going to favor it. So for me, the Falcons run the football, right? Control the clock, keep that Rams offense off the field, right? And I think featuring Bijan is going to be a major part of that. And also in the passing game, there are agendas at stake here on Locked On Falcons. Travis, you have a certain linebacker that used to play for the Atlanta Falcons and Nate Landman. And, Nate Landman has played really well for the Rams this year. But one of the reasons why he's not an Atlanta Falcon were because there were some perceived limitations for him in the pass coverage. And I want to see if those perceived limitations are still there by getting him matched up one-on-one in open field against Bijan Robinson. And I feel like that favors the Atlanta Falcons, but I'm curious what you think of that.
Yeah, it's funny. Like when Landman came in the first part of the season, everybody's like, we just got this guy? Like, who is he? Where did he come from? Because his trajectory was just like this throughout the season, just getting better and better and better. He's punching the ball out. He's sacking the quarterback. He's getting interceptions. It's quieted down a little bit in the back, third of the season or so. But don't get me wrong. He's been very, very good. I think you're right. I think where he is least effective is in coverage there. So we will see. Hopefully the rest of those guys get to the quarterback with Jared Verse, Byron Young, both named to the Pro Bowl. So Kobe Turner coming off one of the best games that he's had as a Ram. He had a sack and a half and an interception. It felt like he was going to kind of be the MVP of that Thursday night game before everything went a little screwball all there at the sudden. As far as for me, as I look at it, the Rams' key to victory, like the Rams have only lost 4 games all season. 3 of the 4 losses are directly tied to failures in the special teams department. I mean, and it's not one of those well played. It was catastrophically bad in 3 of their 4 losses. The game they lost to Carolina, they just lost because Matthew Stafford threw some interceptions and fumbled the ball. They lost to Philadelphia because they had 2 kicks blocked in the 4th quarter. They lost to San Francisco because they missed a chip shot field goal and then started to have to go for it on 4th down in weird situations because they didn't trust their field goal kicker. They lost in Seattle a week and a half ago because they couldn't cover a punt and got a punt return that flipped the game like that for a touchdown. And then they missed a very makeable field goal towards the end of the game. They finally, Aaron, got around to firing their special teams coach last week. You very rarely see a good team, and I believe the Rams are a good team, fire a coach this deep into the season unless the whole season is spun out of control. They fired Chase Blackburn. I'm shocked it took as long as it did because they just couldn't get it right. And I think that what happened against the Seahawks was the last straw. And if the Rams are even just okay on special teams, they don't have to be the best teams in the league. Just be okay. Make your field goals that you're supposed to make. Cover your punts and kickoffs. I think they're going to be in really good shape. I know that sounds simple. It's not for these guys. This has been by far the weakest spot of this team all season long. They're on their 2nd kicker in Harrison Mevis. He missed his first kick of the season last week, but it was also the first kick he took under any sort of pressure all season long. So there's a lot going on that side of the ball. They're going to score points. I think they're going to come back and be much better defensively. You can move the ball against the Rams. I think most teams have this season. They're pretty good at that bend, don't break sort of philosophy. But their special teams is the great equalizer, or in the Rams' case, unequalizer, because no one has any idea what they're going to roll out there at any point. So I think that's where my focus goes to as this game starts, is whether or not they can make their kicks and prevent big plays on the other side.
Yeah. Now, that third phase of the game, special teams has also been a major weakness for the Falcons. And I'm sure Falcon fans are like, man, why couldn't we fire our special teams coordinator, Marquise Williams? And he's probably going to be removed at the end of the season, regardless of what happens with Raheem Morris. The Falcon special teams as of late, though, has been slightly better. Not because they've played particularly good, but they've played some other teams that have had bad special teams like Tampa Bay and Arizona the last couple of weeks. And so this is another game where if the Rams don't respond to this firing of Chase Blackburn, this is another opportunity where the Falcons could potentially win that third phase of the game. And as you mentioned, that could be the difference between making up the ground that I think most of us perceive when it comes to the Rams offense and defense versus the Falcons offense and defense, that if they can make up that ground, and it could boil down to a blocked kick here or field goal made here, that could wind up being the result of this game. So I do think certainly special teams is going to play a part in this game. Travis, is there anything else you want to share with the listeners before we end this very special crossover Thursday here?
I have one for anybody that might be watching us on YouTube. If you're just listening to the podcast, I don't know if this is going to land quite the way that I want it to, but I'm looking over your right shoulder, Aaron, and I believe you're the first crossover host I've ever seen that has Rams gear in their background. That is an Aaron Donald poster that I'm looking at right there. So I'm getting good vibes. I feel like that's a good omen heading into Monday Night Football, that the Falcons host has an Aaron Donald collage back there. And by the way, I love it. It looks great.
Yes, that's the wall of goats back there. I got Aaron Donald. I'm a Pitt alum, so celebrate Aaron Donald here on the show. Julio Jones is also behind me, and Toph Beifong from Avatar: The Last Airbender. All goats when it comes to that particular wall and whatnot. But we'll see if Bijan Robinson, Matt Stafford, or Puka Nacua can make their case to go up on that wall potentially by their performance on Monday night. Jared Verse also in the mix as well. So some superstars that are going to be on the field in this Monday night matchup, and we'll see who comes out on top for this Rams-Falcons game. The Rams being favored by 8.5 points over at FanDuel Sportsbook.
You can find Travis over at Locked On Rams. You can find Aaron over at Locked On Falcons, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So I have you here today on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Next week, we'll be back for the final week of the NFL regular season, and we will probably have plenty of playoff scenarios to talk about. So be sure to stay tuned, hit the like and subscribe button in video form, and follow along and subscribe in audio form wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you right back here soon on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show.